Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another VTV session. Great lineup today. We've actually our first panel. So let's hope it all goes well. I've never done one of these before as a panel.
I didn't know we were the first panel. I'll back that. Yeah. It's special now.
You are the guinea pig.
There we go.
Yeah. So let me introduce. We have Philippa from Hind Management.
Morning.
I'll let you both introduce yourself, and Darcy, calling in from Australia, Brisbane. Philippa, do you want to give us a quick overview of who you are, your background, your field of reference, I suppose?
Sure. Kia ora, and good morning. My name's Philippa Gimilaro, and I work for Hind Management. I've worked for Hind Management for coming up 5 years next month. Hind Management manage the Sedima Hotel Group, and we also have Novotel Christchurch Airport under our management, Moss Bar, and newly reopened The Lane, which was previously Vice and Virtues down in Christchurch. And we have two more hotels opening up, which is Sedima Queenstown at 5 Mile and Sedima Kaikoura, which everyone's really excited about. Yeah. We have just over 280 employees at the moment. Post-COVID, that was 500 plus. So, you know, COVID, there was some resizing we had to do there. So that was a tough early start for us. And we currently have 3 MIQ hotels. So we've been in the MIQ business pretty much from the beginning with our Auckland Airport Hotel. So yeah, it's been a really interesting experience going through COVID, and it's been some real rapid change through that process.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. And you bring a very interesting perspective. We've had Les on previously. Les is on here this morning, I think. Good morning, Les. And Les is head of operations for the Sedima group. But you come from an HR perspective, so we're really looking forward to hearing your view on all that. Going from that, dropping those staff numbers must have been quite a bit of work for yourself and the team around you.
Yeah, it was a tough period.
Sorry, Philippa.
It was a tough period, but you know, yeah, we're on the other side of that.
Yeah, that's good. Darcy, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. So my background is all in psychology, understanding human behavior. I was one of these lucky kids that always knew what I wanted to do when I grew up and went to school. We were talking about this the other day. We've since learned that some people don't learn that until they're 97, let alone 7 years old. But for me, I remember walking past a BBC documentary. When I was about 10 years old, I walked past a BBC documentary on the TV. I just happened to be randomly walking past. And it was a BBC documentary about the brain. And essentially what it was showing was these two neurons, two brain cells connecting in the brain and sending each other information across two neurons. That little gap in there is fascinating because in that gap, the brain cells never actually touch each other. They never actually pass information to each other by touching. All they ever do is pass information through an invisible gap that scientists don't fully understand yet. And so inside that gap, you think your brain is connected, but none of it's actually touching each other at all, which is, to me, is fascinating, right? So inside that gap is the biggest mystery of the universe. Scientists don't fully know understand what fully happens in between that gap. But when I was watching that, I was like, that is fascinating to me. This thing that is responsible for all of our personality, all of our behavior, all of our values, all of our decision-making, all our fears, all our desires, all of it happens inside this little gap between two brain cells. And scientists know very little about it as it is. And I'm like, wow, well, if that's a field of study that you could dig into for the rest of your life and never get bored, I reckon I just found it. And so I was fortunate enough to know that was what I wanted to study and dedicate my life to from that point forward. And literally have pretty much every single day since. The brain is my first love. It'll be my last love. And it really is fascinating. Why we do what we do is essentially why I'm here, I believe. So it's cool to be able to share the knowledge in a environment like this. I'm really appreciative and thankful for the opportunity. So
it's good, Darcy. We did call you a geek in the
Yes, geek is putting it nicely. Yeah,
which I think you've just shown us why you earned that title.
That's it. I've earned it. I'll take it. Wear it like a badge.
Yeah. And from our part, as a company, we've worked with Darcy and Y Bravo, the company that trying to understand human behavior and that kind of stuff from a business perspective, and how we can use it to drive better results within our team and for our customers and clients and that kind of stuff. So we've spent a bit of time with Darcy and never, I don't think we've drained your knowledge yet. I think we've got a long way to go.
Maybe we'll crack it on this webinar. Let's give it a go.
Yeah. So of course, everybody, we've got some really good perspectives on the call today. So feel free to fire your questions through, and we'll try and get to some of them as we close up. But firstly, Philippa, you've got a big machine that you're working with. You've had multiple lockdowns through the Auckland region, but then your chain spreads further afield. How has the last 7 weeks affected your team differently, or has it affected your team differently, and if so, how?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. It's interesting because obviously we have our support office as well, which is in the background here, and we have a number of our team there who are really looking at high level inside the business, and it's been tricky for them because we're a small team. We're sort of 14 of us in that office, and we sit and we really work closely together and bounce off each other. So that connection piece has been tricky for us because we're all suddenly at home and just as busy or busier than ever working at home, but we don't have that bounce from each other. So it's been trying to keep them connected, but not over-engineering how we do that with tons of meetings or expectations on them. We've stuck with our once a week sort of morning catch up, connecting with everyone, and then we've tried to have some little fun Friday afternoon quizzes and get-togethers and drinks and things online, and that's completely optional. If someone does it not in the right headspace or they've got too much on, it's we haven't expected them to come in and join that.
Yeah, sure.
Our hotel teams are completely different because they are fully operational and they're on their feet, and suddenly they're at home. And some of the research around tells us that young people have definitely struggled more with that remote isolation and being at home than perhaps folks in our age demographic, where we're more used to sitting in front of a PC for hours on end and working alone. So our teams have worked really hard to think about what would motivate them and keep them together. They've done some really fun things, particularly our Auckland team, because as you know, it's really dragging for us up here in Auckland. They've organised, makeup tutorials and escape rooms online and things like that to keep them excited. We're also we've been learning Te Reo, so we were doing that in support office and remoting into the hotels, but we've been able to keep doing that at home, which is great via Zoom. Yeah. And then I guess just carrying on with a little bit of business as usual, updating SOPs and things like that, and having meaningful work as well that the operational team could do, which that when we're back open again, that work that they've done, it isn't just sweep away because it was lockdown work. It's actually things that will make a difference to their job ongoing. Our Auckland hotel only opened in December, so this was really their full first lockdown. So there was a lot of nerves, I think, at the beginning where they didn't know us that well and they weren't sure what was going to happen. So it was a lot of communication with that team, talking them through what our expectations were and being really clear around that communication.
Yeah.
And the rest of the country, we're operating MIQ, so every day is level 4. So there's a lot of businesses as usual going in our MIQs. Christchurch City obviously again was different because that's an operating hotel, but we were refreshing the restaurant at the same time that the lockdown struck, so a lot of work behind the scenes was still ongoing, and we've been able to come out with a brand new uniform for the team and a revised look in the restaurant, which is keep up that motivation, excitement for the role. So I think we've done quite well this lockdown compared to the first, which was a real shock. And as I mentioned earlier, we had some resizing to do and it was a difficult period, but I think Well, this one, we've had that feeling of, it's really dragging on. How do we motivate the teams? People have felt that security, knowing that, their jobs aren't on the line, and, just how can we get through it from a mental health point of view?
And that security is such a big one. We're talking about it previously with the visas and that type of thing that came out this morning. Having that peace of mind that things are, I was going to say secure, it's a hard word to use at the moment. Stable is also a hard one to use, but just takes that weight off some of those people. There's a lot of immigrants in this industry, and it's that hidden weight, I suppose, that a lot of us don't see. We take for granted that we live here and we're not going to be sent off somewhere else. What's your thoughts about what Philip has brought to us there, Darcy?
I think that it's tough to jump from the branch that is shaky, meaning what you say about security is so true. When people have a base level of security, they'll know that they can take risks again, that they can try new things, that they can make mistakes and it's going to be okay, that they can grow, that they can innovate, whatever it may be. And having that base level of security makes that possible. If you don't have any of that, it's near impossible to see a bigger, brighter world outside the fear of clinging on to any sort of branch you can hold on to that you're living in. And so that's so true, Philippa. I think that any added level of security is going to be a good thing for sure, especially for people right now when so few things seem certain in this world right now. Would you agree? It's like wherever you look, there's a new problem that's just formed another 3 problems. And those 3 problems have their 3 problems. And so it just, wherever we look right now, there's so much uncertainty. So any certainty we can give people, particularly in forms of employment, finance, etc., to help that branch be a bit more solid, that's going to be good.
Yeah, it's good. And it's a question that I had jotted down to bring up later, but I think it's a good time to bring it up now, is as our role as leaders, senior staff, you mentioned, Philippa, that the younger people aren't quite so certain. We might be business owners on this call or senior staff. Darcy, how much impact do we have? Maybe we don't realise we're having that impact, or we're providing security or assurance. But what's your perspective there?
I was interested that Philippa said that younger people are struggling with it more. Not that it's unexpected. It's just it is interesting that you can sort of split the two, and there is a significant difference between the two. I think perhaps sometimes, as a massive generalisation, some adults, some of them, when lockdown comes, I know plenty of adults that have been like, oh, I can't wait for this one. I get to just chill and actually be inside for a bit and not have to go out to parties and not have to socialize. If it's just like a week's lockdown, actually, I'll take it. Some adults have actually had that perspective. I might know one a little bit personally. Then you also have kids that, interestingly enough, are more into, say, video games and things like this. So they're, sometimes a week inside, 2 weeks lockdown, whatever, part of them might be excited by it. But so that's why I'm interested in that kids naturally, I'm fascinated by that. Kids naturally have a tendency or a desire to want to get outside, play, break walls, get fresh air, etc. And that's actually really great to see. I think we have this idea of children these days that all they do is sit inside on their computer. Well, what we're discovering, if this is the case, Philippa, is that that's actually not necessarily the case. Kids are driven to want to go get their knees dirty, and adults not so much. Adults have got their knees dirty. They've eaten worms when they were 6 years old already. They've already done all that stuff. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, the coping mechanisms that we have. I think that it's a matter of realizing that at the end of the day, people need balance. And humans are driven, it's like this natural desire within us. Humans are driven to want to get out and explore. We want to keep moving. We don't like being locked down, no matter how much we might like it when it's like, oh, good, a week just to rest. Or a kid might go, yay, a week to play video games. Shortly after that, pretty much every single one of us wants to get out there and do things, explore, move. And so I think it's being mindful of the fact that eventually that tide's going to sway, and it's about supporting people when the, the cabin fever probably gets a bit too much of them.
Yeah,
I think also our industry, we attract people who are people. They want to welcome people. They want to interact with people. They love hospitality. They love serving people. So they really struggle. Well, all of a sudden our borders are closed and their customers are cut off, and they're sent home to, you know, work from a PC, which is often the whole reason that they've chosen hospitality. It's because they don't want to be stuck in front of the 9 to 5 and sit in front of a computer. So it's a real flip for them. And it's, you know, how do we find what they're passionate about, or how do we get that excitement so that when they come back and they can deliver those great experiences again for our people. You know, when there's that pent-up demand that comes through after the lockdown in the South Island, or wants to get back to the North Island, we know you do, Luke. You know, how do we ensure that that person's in the right frame of mind when they're back on shift?
Nice.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, we noticed that at the very first initial lockdown, we noticed that what you're saying about the younger generation, which I should still class myself there as probably, I'm not sure, but the more senior or elder ones in our staff were like, yeah, we've been through ups and downs in life before. You know, it'll blow over. Might be a year, might be a little, like, you know. Younger ones were definitely a little bit like, wow, this is big, you know. But I suppose that's all part of growing up, right? It's experience.
So I spoke to my grandpa about that recently, that exact topic. I said, Pa, is this, you know, he's 88 or something like that. I said, Pa, all this COVID stuff is pretty phenomenal to us. You know, we've never experienced anything like this. You know, is this new to you, or do you feel like you can handle this a little bit better because have you been through anything like this before? And he sent me an email shortly after, and he said, if you're around about 90 years old, you've been through this, and a massive list of world wars, and, you know, all of this. And he said, yeah, I hate to tell you, Das, but it's actually a bit more normal to us than perhaps it is to you. Still not easy, never easy, but nonetheless not abnormal. And I thought that was such a fascinating thing to realize, that actually a pandemic style unrest is actually more normal to the world than perhaps our generation has realized.
Yeah. And that goes back to our initial question for this point, was as leaders, we can provide that stable. I mean, people would look to us as ones that should be providing that stable platform. You said about it's hard to jump off the shaky branch. They'll be looking to us, people will be looking to us, and probably whether we realize that or not, we might think the team don't. But for myself here, we've got a team that are well older than I am, but as general manager, they actually look to you as a person who is going to provide that stable platform, and it's whether you like it or not. That's your job, which comes with its own challenges, you know.
And that's tough for our leaders, you know. And part of my role is supporting our leaders, carrying that burden of having to have a brave face all the time. And it's part of that is also having that conversation that, you know, it's actually really good if you show some vulnerability to your team as well, and say, look, I'm having a really tough time with this, guys. I'm going to talk to you about it, or, you know, I just want to let you know that I'm having a rough time, but I'm going to come back to you, or we're going to communicate about it. But I think that vulnerability is important, because if a leader shows that they can be vulnerable or they can have a really tough day, it means that your team can also say, look, you know, I'm having a rough day too, I'm not coping well. So that it's kind of double-sided, isn't it? You've got to have that mindset that it is going to get better and we're all in this together. But I think it's also important that you show that you're vulnerable as well.
Yeah, that's good. Darcy, what's your thoughts on that? Like, where is it, like, someone can be vulnerable, and I try and be as vulnerable as I can in the office, but at the same time the team looks to you for certainty. So where is that blend healthy? At what point does it switch from healthy to he this is a leader who doesn't know what he's doing?
So there comes a part in everyone's life where they realize that they are just as clueless as their parents are, right? So we all grow up, we all look at mum, we look at dad, and we think they've got it sorted. So long as I'm under their wing, I'll be okay. So long as I'm under their umbrella, dad knows what to do. Mum's always got this sorted. It's all good. You get a little bit older, and as you become an adult, you become a bit closer with your parents, generally speaking, or whoever took care of you, or an auntie or an uncle or whatever it may be. And you realize, you know, you watch them, I don't know, put coffee in when they were supposed to put in Milo or something like that. And you realize, hey, you make mistakes too. hey, if you make mistakes, that probably means that you probably have less answers than even I do. I get it. We're all in this together and we all have actually no clue what we're doing, right? And the same thing can actually happen with employees when they look to leaders, right? So an employee, when they first join an organization, looks to a leader and says, that's Luke. He knows, he's full steam ahead. He knows what he's doing. At the end of the day, Luke, you actually know nothing. You have, when you really boil it down, very few people here have any idea really what they're doing, right? It's just some people know how to act with more certainty than others. Yeah. That's all, okay? And so the way that works is we tend to follow people who have more certainty in a particular area. If you have certainty in your ability to be vulnerable, they'll actually follow your certainty in your ability to be vulnerable more than they'll follow the vulnerability, okay? Right. Because in actual fact, the vulnerability can actually look, you don't want to follow that leader into war. You don't want to follow a war leader that's not wearing a shield and just says, come on, opponents, take me down. It's like, well, I'm not following that person. That's very vulnerable. Does that make sense? Yeah. But if you've got certainty in the decision that you've made to do it, then most likely they're going to be like, he's doing that for a reason. And I really feel like the reason actually matters. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. So the more practical way to look at this is, as a leader, understand that it's okay to have vulnerable conversations with your team. Absolutely do that. Just be very aware of the reason and the conscious reason for why you're doing it, as opposed to, oh, I heard on a podcast I should show more vulnerability. Really? Like, is that necessarily the truth? Do you know that to be true? Like, what's your reasoning behind that? You got to question that. And if you can't question it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it because you don't know it well enough to analyze it, right? So the key here that comes with it is realizing that when you make a decision, you're going to be vulnerable as a leader. You can act with more certainty, and sometimes your position of authority gives you more certainty, but that's okay. Just decide that whatever it is you are going to do moving forward, you're 100% committed to that. There are so many choices you could make. You'll never get it right. But whichever one you do choose, put your line in the sand and go for it. I play a lot of golf. One of the things I've realized that really improves my game a lot lately is deciding which shot I'm going to play, like looking at where the pin is, looking where I'm standing, shot, like, squaring up my shoulders, wiggling my little butt, getting down on the ground and just being like, that's where I'm going to hit the ball. And then I forget about that and I just commit fully to that shot. And usually it goes somewhere close. Usually, sometimes it goes in the tree still, but somewhere close. But what I've realized is the worst thing I can do, the worst thing, is line up to my shot and then get halfway through my swing and then change my decision. Because then it's just like the thing goes, I hardly even get the thing off the ground, right? So if you limp into your decisions, the balls go sideways at best. As long as you commit to a decision, you're always going to get right and wrong. You're always going to make mistakes. But holding that path towards where you're going to go, that's what people find valuable. Employees know nothing's perfect, but at least they're following someone who at least knows where they're damn going.
That's good. Because your team will pick up that uncertainty if you're not fully committed. Someone once said, if there's 1% doubt in a parent, there's 99% doubt in the child.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
They'll pick up on that little piece. Commitment.
I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, commit 100% to it.
Eat you alive.
Yeah. That's why I've got three little girls ranging from 2 to 7, and it's like, can I have this ice block? And if you hesitate for too long, it's almost a given. You say no, but it'll be savage.
Yeah, I like transparency. I don't have kids. I don't have kids yet. I would love to have kids one day, but I don't have kids yet. And so maybe if we redo this webinar in a year or two from now, and I've got droopy eyes and I'm tired, and I'll just feel like, forget the commitment, I don't know, just go play golf. Seriously, it's easier.
What are you saying, Darcy? Have I got droopy eyes and looking?
No. I'm saying I definitely would. I'd have no choice.
Nice. Philippa, a metaphorical question for you. There's a lockdown going to happen, right? And some little birdie's told you the 9 months, say 12 months. What would you be doing with your team today, spread across the country like they are, that would help them prepare for that?
Yeah, I think we've been through a lot of adapting in the last 18 months, and it's incredible to think back over that period, where we've come in such a short period and how resilient the team have been. And I think each time we've, hit one of these kinds of barriers, it's brought everyone closer together, and we've actually got a pretty tight-knit team now, and I feel like we're much stronger for some of these things that we've been up against. So, being prepared, looking at what we could do in that downtime, keeping up with the team building and activities, and communication's really key. We've recently started during this lockdown. Liz has been doing online sort of town halls or all employee meetings, and at the end we've had Q&As at the end, which has been really great, because for us, we used to be in the hotels all the time, going talking to teams, hearing their feedback, and we've really missed that because we've been stuck in Auckland and often stuck at home. So by having that communication with the team, we've actually felt that connection again. And doing the work beforehand, making sure you've got that belonging piece right, because once the team feel like they belong to the company, they feel a lot more comfortable asking those tricky questions. A lot of our team members, frontline team members, are more than happy to put up their hand and ask Les some really tough questions. Nice. And I think that goes a long way to say, we've got some of those things right there around that culture and creating that, you can ask anything kind of atmosphere. Yeah,
it's good. It's hard to create probably create a strong culture in a time of crisis or time of pressure like we are. But if we haven't got it, the best time to start is still today. But it does prove its worth, definitely, times like this. I suppose both of you probably aware of how much time we also, that's why we work, Philippa, together. Well, for both of you, we all work together really well because we understand the importance of culture and values and that type of thing. But it does show its worth so strong in times of pressure.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Darcy, a question for you from Les. The world is changing at an ever-increasing speed. What mental skills can we deploy to cope with the seemingly endless journey of disruption?
Okay, so thanks for the question, Les. The key here, I believe, is to get on the front foot in two ways. The first, and I was thinking about this, I saw the question come through earlier. It's a great question because there's so many different angles we could look at through this. But the first point is to realize that it may look like the world is changing at an ever-increasing speed, but things will only ever be speeding up at the same rate they're slowing down. Okay, so in some ways, the world is going wild. Technology makes things go like this, like crazy, right? But in other ways, we've actually, and that can be overwhelming to a lot of people. That can be too much. I'm plugged in all the time. I've always got my phone. I'm addicted to this with my thumbs, all of this, right? So it can look like the world is increasing because you're tapping into the things that are making it look like it's increasing. I don't know about you, but I scroll quicker these days than I did 10 years ago, right? So that's increasing. I'm responsible for flicking that, okay? So to realize, first of all, this, the world looks like it's increasing because people depend on you believing that it is. Typically, I would ask you, how do you know the world's increasing? What lets you know that? And you'd say, oh, well, it's all over the news. It's all over the media, or it's all over Facebook. It's all over social media. Like, look at everything going on. It's like, yeah, who's tapping into those things? It's like me. It's like, great. So you're choosing to consume media whose job it is to keep you hooked on the idea that the world's moving quick because that's scary and that's how they sell newspapers, right? So it's always the world isn't, you go to nature and you go hang out in a tent for a weekend, go camping, things are very slow. If you don't have any service on your phone, the world actually, you'll realize, was never sped up. It was just that humans' technology had, and humans are the ones who decide to use technology. So if it's speeding up and you don't like it, stop using it. Simple. I don't believe there's really necessarily any tactic or mental thing that is going to overcome the fact that this is designed to keep you addicted. That's what it's designed for. They don't make money if you don't use this. So be aware of that and stop using it. Otherwise it uses you. Does this make sense? So that's a major key with it. The second thing is to educate yourself. So not only educate yourself in that respect in terms of technology and how that's all speeding up, but the second thing is to realize that in a world of disruption, that ultimately, team, that in itself is not slowing down from a technological perspective. People will continue to innovate, continue to grow, continue to create new things, continue to invent, right? So people are going to continue to do that. And that's totally okay. But the key is, if you don't educate yourself around how to work with that and how to keep it at bay when you need to, ultimately it will use you, like we just spoke about before. Mm-hmm. So if you're on the front foot with educating yourself about how technology works, and if you're on the front foot with educating yourself in terms of how disruption is going to occur no matter what, you can decide to work with it, but you can also be the one that also plugs into it and helps create it in a better way. In the same way that disruption is happening in ways that we don't like, there's just as much disruption happening in ways that we do. We look at the world of think about environmentalism, right? Everyone would raise their hand and say a green planet is a better one. I don't think there's anyone on this call that would sit there and go, "This is no, more of a black planet for me, please." That's, as in, like, let's make this thing just this brown, mucky, yuck, gross, oil-colored crap, right? No one's saying that. Everyone's like, "Yeah, more green sounds good." So innovation and growth is happening in those areas, and disruption's happening in those areas to the benefit of our world, significantly in amounts that we would never have comprehended even 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yet what the media will tell you is that something else is happening. Disruption and growth and innovation is happening at speeds we could never comprehended 20 years ago. And that's scary because now it's all overwhelming to you. They're both true. It just depends on which one you choose to focus on. So let's just ask you, what mental skills can we deploy to cope? Choose what you focus on. Choose what you let use you. And a lot of the time in industries, and many of us are business owners, I get it. It's hard to avoid technology. Would you agree, Luke? Would you agree, Philippa? Like in our roles, technology is all around us, but there are so many simple things that we can do to stop it. Like delete the apps on your phone that you don't need to be looking at all the time, like Instagram, Facebook, or all of that. None of it's good for you. None of it's healthy. None of it helps. Have you ever noticed whenever you get off social media, you feel worse than when you got on it before? Like no matter what, you feel worse after you got off it, right? Mm-hmm. And so in order to feel better, you get back on it again. That's called an addiction loop. It's not there to help you. It's there to make money. Think about it, right? They don't make money by you by just being nice to you. They make money by doing what's going to make money. And what makes them money is addiction. Okay. So I'm going a bit of a rant here, Luke, but it's a passionate topic. So the answer to your question, Les, the skill to deploy is focus and deciding what to keep out of your life rather than keep in it.
That's good. And I think knowing a little bit about Les, sorry to talk about you, Les, but Les also does martial arts, or does.
One or the other. He'd get it. Yeah, he'd get it in a heartbeat then.
That focus thing, and that's exactly, I don't do martial arts, as you can tell, but I understand a little bit around that focus, where you focus your attention goes, that type of thing.
Love it. Les, a shout out to I'm so interested in martial arts from a psychology perspective. It's fascinating. One basic premise of martial arts, or some martial arts, they're all different, of course. And Les, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to say something definitely very wrong here. But anyway, a basic premise of martial arts is that you don't necessarily, if I come up to you, Luke, and we have a boxing match, that's one force versus another. You and I are going to get in conflict over that. Mm-hmm. Good martial arts will teach you that when someone goes to punch you, you don't punch back, you grab their arm and move it with you and use the force against itself. And I feel like the same can happen in the world. You've got a lot of social media and things telling you it's difficult and disrupting coming at you. If you fight up against it, all you'll ever do is do this. Mm-hmm. But you can just observe it and watch it, let it go. That's also within your capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other interesting analogy that you see play out sometimes is when dogs fight. when there's two dogs fighting, they both fight. If one suddenly snap and just walk away, the other one stops. Which is, like you're saying, the stuff that we see around us that so negatively impact us in our well-being and our mental health, like social media and that. If we tend to engage with it, it has a damaging effect. If we just disassociate ourselves, then it's just not even there.
So well said.
Philippa, did you have any comments on Darcy's rant?
Yeah, on the other side of that, I'd like to say that we use some, we've had some good users of apps like Mentamia, which Darcy, I don't know if you're aware of it. Sir JK and Ex All Black has created a really great mental health app. It's got things like a worry map, so you put all your worries in. Why is it a worry? And then a balloon comes up and you cut the balloon and your worries float away. So we've used some things like that for our teams to who are potentially using their phones a lot in their downtime on their breaks. You see them in the staff room, everyone's got their phone with them. So to put into a positive way of getting some mindfulness through that device, which they obviously are connected with and excited to use.
Well said.
We use Yammer as well to share some of the cool stuff the teams are doing, so that if you're in Christchurch, you can still connect with people in Auckland and foster some friendships and connection through that. And it might be putting a chef saying, look at this great piece of work I've done, taking a photo of a meal. Or, the other day, the team were doing a warm-up dance in the middle of click and collect deliveries, just as a way of connecting. And then they shared that, and then everyone was engaging with them through that little moment. So, like you say, it's all in moderation, isn't it? And how you use it.
All in moderation, which applies
well
to
said.
Everything you look at. It's all in moderation. It's not a problem when it's in moderation. Yeah. Hey, we could talk here all day, because we've literally only went through about half the questions, but we are coming up almost 40 minutes. And I'm mindful of you guys' time. I'm mindful of our audience's time. Where we do carry this conversation on is on our VTV Facebook group. So it is a private group. So if you want to join that, anyone wants to join that, just jump on our Facebook page, and probably Philippa and Darcy might join in there to help answer any of these questions that are coming through. But I hope everyone's got something out of this. I definitely have. And I really want to thank you guys. It's such a deep topic. It's bottomless, really. But we've seen from you two guys the two different perspectives. One who's sort of working with the people on day to day, and Darcy, just a geek on all things mind and brain.
I'm claiming that for now. And I'd never heard of Yammer, Philippa, and Alberta's just put it in the chat there if anyone wants to click on that. I'm going to check that out. Sounds like a interesting app, so thanks.
Cool. Luke, if you don't mind, I'd love to say a shout out to our MIQ, so our managed isolation and quarantine hotels, both within our group and the others across New Zealand, because they're doing such a huge mahi for New Zealand. They're on the coalface, and surprisingly at the moment they're some of the safest places to work, because we're getting really little infections coming across the border, and as you know, we've got community transmission here in Auckland, but they're tough places to work. You're in full PPE in some of those roles, and some of the community have been a little bit tougher than we would have hoped on those team members. So if you work with a company, or if you know someone who operates an MIQ, give them a shout out, because they're really doing it tough, and they're doing it tough for 18 months now. And I really think they've been the heroes of this COVID response, day in, day out.
I heartily agree. We've heard a lot, and for very good reason, about the healthcare workers, but these guys are healthcare workers in their own right. And as you say, they're very much the hidden heroes. And as you said, I've talked to Les about it, people getting stalked, or not stalked, I should say, but names put on social media because they work in MIQ and this kind of stuff, which is just such it's so negative and so terrible to think of. These guys doing these long days full PPE and that, and then they can't even go to their local supermarket without being, you know, bailed up for it. So yeah, hardly agree.
As a final word on that thread, when I got when you first said that we wanted to do this webinar for the community, I thought the one thing I thought was, if there's ever a community or a group of people that could value a conversation like this, it's the people working in any form of like travel or tourism, which of course all of the people on this webinar most likely are. You guys know them better than I do, but
yeah.
Our message to you guys is like, if it's tough, we feel for you, and any way we can support, just say the word, because you're going through a tough time, probably tougher than most, and to be recognized in that, I think is the message we'd love to get across to you. So any way we can support, please just say the word.
Yeah. And I'll just share the screen. Obviously it's, you know, these are the health lines and that that any of us can contact, but and call out to your family and friends too, those other people in our communities. Sometimes we've found we've sent out a lot of chocolates in the past 18 months. Probably, I don't know if chocolate's an addiction, but must get close to it at some point.
So welcome.
But it's just like the most smallest thing. It costs us, I don't know, like $1.50 or something plus postage, and the feedback that we get from someone just saying that they had chocolate arrive at their doorstep or into their reception, it's incredible. But it's the smallest thing that we can do, you know, but it means a lot.
It's
Just
awesome.
those little acts of kindness, you know, saying, hey, you're doing a great job, keep up the great work. It really means a lot to people.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you, team. Sorry to cut
Thank
this.
you so
It feels
much.
like we're cutting it short, but I really appreciate your time, and everyone on the call. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Luke.
No, it's
thank you. Appreciate it. And
All
pleasure
right.
to meet you, Philippa.
You too.
Cheers. Thanks,
Have a
team.
good day, everybody.
Bye.
And,
Take care.
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.